Hello, everyone. How are you? I am Lisa Sabaniak, founder of LifeLikeYouMeanIt.com and host of the group The Life You Deserve here on Facebook. Today, I would like to talk to you about imposter syndrome, thanks to one of my group members, Suzanne, where I posted earlier in this week what you would like to hear about. And Suzanne so graciously suggested that I speak about imposter syndrome. So what in the world is imposter syndrome, first of all? This is actually a well-known and recognized phenomenon. It's been well-known and recognized since 1978. Can you believe that? And it's an actual psychological pattern where you have a huge doubt in your own, not only your own abilities, but your own accomplishments, where you don't necessarily believe that you truly earned an accomplishment, but rather you have this kind of feeling like you just got lucky, where you're just not able to give yourself credit where credit is due. And that might come across as any kind of way in your life, really, where it might be something where you feel like at work that maybe you just lucked out and got the job, even though you had to go through a process of interviewing, right? You had an application that you had to fill out, you had a series of interviews perhaps, and you've been proving every single day at work that you are able to do your job. You feel deep down inside that you really just got lucky, and at any moment now, your bosses are going to figure out that you are not the best for the job or you do not belong here. It might be something, it might come across as you becoming a perfectionist, right? I've done other videos where I've talked about perfectionism, and I've made my stance really clear with this one, that I just don't believe in perfectionism. I think that we are imperfect beings, and that in itself is perfection. And I think that with imposter syndrome, we have such a self-doubt and sometimes even a self-loathing that we try to be the very best that we can possibly be in an effort to try to fit in, to try to belong, right? We think that we have to go above and beyond. We have to go above everybody else, go that extra mile in order to show people that we actually deserve to be there. And I mean, this brings in all kinds of other issues that have gone on for centuries, right, with women's rights and things like that. But if you just put those types of things aside for a moment and just look at your deep down feelings about things, that's what I want to talk about today. It also could come across like if you are self-employed. So for example, me being a success coach, I hear a lot of other people, a lot of my clients that I work with, particularly if they're trying to leave the corporate world, for example, and go out on their own, be self-employed, or people that I work with that are already self-employed, where they are constantly asking themselves, how are they qualified to do this, right? I could have asked myself in the beginning of my practice, how am I qualified to be a coach? And these people will usually go off and be doing training after training after training, right? It's never enough because they don't feel like they've actually have the ability to do what it is that they want to do because they don't have the qualifications. And so for an example, a person like myself, being a success coach, there are actually programs out there that people can take. Lots of different types of programs depending on what type of coach you want to be. There's coaches that work with business, very specific in corporations type of success. And then there are more lifestyle coaches. There is fashion coaches. There's people that coach on marketing and actually starting up a business, blogging coaches. There's all kinds of different coaches, right? And even if you take the realm of success coach, there's lots of different things that you can do to be a success coach. So myself in particular, I am what I call a success coach, but I am not focused on the corporate world. My version of success is with yourself, with your ability to actually look past things like this and actually see your own worth and see your own value and know your strength so that you can actually deal with issues like this that come up with imposter syndrome and actually use them to your advantage. Find your weakness and use it as your strength, right? Turn it into your strength. And so there are all kinds of programs to do this, and programs that, for example, bring in spirituality into the mix for how you would do your coaching business. So there is no one right program that would fit everyone. And for me, myself, I didn't take any additional program to be a coach, because the program that I've developed, my Survivor to Warrior program as a coach, is based on my own life experience and what I did to get past all the self-esteem issues, the self-loathing, the absolute self-hatred that I had, this need I had to sabotage myself because of my past, because of my abuse that I went through, and how that taught me to really, truly hate myself, and how I was able to climb out of that. Right? So I use my own personal experience. That is how I am qualified. And I've been in lots of conversations, actually quite recently, with different people who have asked, how am I qualified? And they're not asking because they're suggesting I don't have the qualification. They're genuinely interested. They see a lot of people on Facebook, for example, advertising about coaching, and now they're talking to me and I'm telling them that I'm a coach. And so they're very truly and honestly just interested on, how do you actually become a coach? And so I have a choice in that moment when they're asking me, how are you qualified? I could take that very personally and start having some doubt within myself and actually start questioning, how am I qualified? And start making up reasons why I haven't taken these programs and things like that. Or I can just trust in my own strength and say, well, I am very highly qualified. In fact, I'm the most qualified for this position because I'm the only one that's gone through my exact scenario. And I'm the only one that has gone through not just my scenario of abuse, but my scenario of recovery. And there are going to be other people that are going to resonate with me above anybody else. And that will be the perfect fit. And everybody else that I am not the perfect fit for, that doesn't mean I'm doing anything wrong. It just means that there's somebody else out there that they will resonate more with. And having that trust in myself and that ultimate love for myself makes me be able to accept that without actually taking it personally. So if you're tuning into this, I'd love to get a thumbs up from you or a heart. I'd love even more for you to give me a comment. Let me know how you are doing this, how imposter syndrome might be manifesting itself in your life. I would be fascinated to know and see if we can answer some questions that you might have. So in the meantime, I don't want you to think that you are the only one. So for basically, there is, roughly speaking, 70% of the human population actually has gone through, at one point in their life or another, imposter syndrome. The stats really are an estimation of 70% of people have judged themselves, have looked back and actually thought, I can't do this. There's somebody else that's better to do this than me. They've actually had a lot of self-doubt and maybe even some lack of self-respect and lack of self-worth in regards to this, right? And that's not all that shocking, at least not to me, it isn't, right? That is very understandable, where it would happen to every single person at some point in their lives, whether they've suffered from any kind of abuse or negative past or not, right? We're just kind of built that way. It's kind of ingrained in us to kind of second guess ourselves. And that, evolutionarily speaking, is actually a really good thing for us to cast judgment upon ourselves and take a step back and actually say, you know, am I actually the best for this? Am I doing this the best way? Because otherwise we would have died out a long time ago. So I actually think, biologically speaking, it is a wonderful asset for us to be able to look back and actually use hindsight and maybe even some foresight beforehand and see if we are doing the best job that we are doing. And we're not the only ones that have done this. Really brilliant minds like Albert Einstein and Meryl Streep and Maya Angelou have all suffered from imposter syndrome, right? It is not something that is rare. It is so, so common. And often what is common about this is that the more success that you achieve, the worse the imposter syndrome gets. Because really at the root of it is you are waiting for somebody to actually think and call you out on your fraud. You think that you are kind of selling something that is not yours to sell, right? Or that you are trying to pass yourself off as being something that you're not, right? In the workplace, you're the best at your job when you really don't think that you are. And every single day you feel like you're lying to everybody else around you because you're trying to prove to them something that you already know is fake, right? And so that really is what imposter syndrome is. And you can imagine then the more success you reach, or the more people that are around you that you think that you are pulling off this fraudulent game with, the worse your fall is going to be. Right. So people like Albert Einstein and Maya Angelou and Meryl Streep, it's not shocking to think that, I mean, it might be shocking for some of us to think, my God, they were all brilliant geniuses in their own way. And yet they would actually have self-doubt. Of course they would, because they're human. And then the more self-doubt that they have and the more success that they gain, it's just a vicious cycle that fuels itself, isn't it? This really prevents people from really believing in themselves, right? For believing that they can do this thing that they are trying to do. And the more external success they have, the worse that this really is, right? They feel that their success is due to luck, right? That they didn't, I was saying this at the beginning, that they didn't, apply for the job and were one of the best candidates to be chosen on paper. Then they went in and interviewed for the job and they were the best candidate out of everybody that interviewed. And now they've had the job for 1, 2, 5 years, 10 years for some people. And they've been proving every single day that they're the best person for the job. But yet deep down inside, they feel that they were just lucky. It was just fluke. By chance, they got that interview, and by chance, they were the best one because they managed to, be fraudulent in that moment. They managed to convince somebody else that they were something that they weren't. And so, sometimes this stems back from our childhood, of course, right? If we've had really nasty childhoods, if we were abandoned emotionally or physically from our adults, the people that should have been helping us and find our self-esteem and our love and our value of ourselves, then that seems really obvious, right? But I want to look at childhood in the sense of every single child learns from their peer group that you are more accepted when you just fit in, when you just toe the line, right? That if you do anything that stands out above everybody else, then you're usually made fun of. You're usually cast aside, whether people are jealous or envious of you and they start making fun of you, you become the target of bullying, or you get cast out of your social circle, or whatever it is, right? If you're a star athlete hanging out with all other star athletes, then your norm is to be a star athlete. But if you're not, if all of your friends are people that are not athletic and then you're the star athlete, that might be standing out. And so you might actually start holding yourself back from being the star athlete and just being a athlete, right? To try to hone it in a little bit and fit in. And that ends up working for you. And you end up learning a really valuable lesson for yourself there on how to get by. It really does feel like survival, especially when you're a teenager, doesn't it? When that's really the only thing that is important to you in your life at that moment is just survival. And that means fitting in with your social circle, being accepted like everybody else. And so you learn that very valuable skill, and then you transfer it into adulthood, don't you? And so I want to talk a little bit about then how we can clear that, because obviously, having these feelings that you are not good enough, that you are just, convincing people that you are somebody that you're not, and they're buying in on this fraud, and that eventually somebody's going to find out and catch you out on it. I think that it's not a big stretch to be able to see how that would hold you back in your professional life. And then, of course, if you're doing it in your personal life as well, that is going to hold you back. And really what we're talking about at the very core of it is self-doubt, right? We're really talking about a low self-esteem, self-doubt, lack of respect for yourself, lack of valuing and worth, finding your own worth in yourself, a lack of self-love. And so the first thing that I would do as a coach in my coaching program, what I get you to do is to really figure out what it is that you stand for. What are your core values in the end? And are you actually doing something in your day-to-day that is outside of your core values? So are you really truly feeling that you are, not the best at what you do, because really what you're doing is not in alignment with who you really are? So are you going to work every day, advocating for something that you are actually morally against, for example, right? So we start looking at the actual truth of the matter, right? Is there something that's actually going on that you are going outside of yourself and not being true to yourself in your day to day. And that's giving you this real sense of tug of war between your true self and the self that you are exposing to everybody else. And then once we figure out that, no, in fact, you are being quite true to yourself, that you're not pretending to be something that you're not, that you are actually giving of yourself, you're in service to others, that you are actually being whole and true to yourself as much as you are to, your job and your friendships, your relationships and everything else, then we start looking at the real nitty gritty of things, which is, where did this whole thought process come from that you're not good enough to actually have this success, that you're not good enough to be the best at what you are doing, that you're not good enough to be able to actually have reward for the hard work that you are putting in to your day, whether that, again, is personally or professionally. And really that does come down to that core trait of whether or not you believe that you deserve that, right? So I like to do this exercise where every time you've got a negative mantra that starts to pop up, right? And we all know what I'm talking about. My negative mantra comes from my 10 years of child abuse, from the time I was 2 to 12, when my stepfather would tell me that I was ugly, stupid, worthless, useless, and nobody was ever going to love me. And that mantra I continued to play in my head for at least another 15 years after we left. So at least until I was in my late 20s. And I really did do it to myself. I was abusing myself over and over and over again with this mantra, until I started to learn how to replace the mantra. And so if you are resonating with this idea of imposter syndrome and you are saying, oh my God, I recognize myself in this, then, every time that you catch yourself thinking, oh my God, I didn't do that perfectly, or I'm not going to speak up at the meeting because I know that I'm not great at speaking on my feet, or, oh, I'm not great at speaking in front of a crowd, and so I'm just not going to speak. And that that's holding you back at work. Then we start to actually look at, well, can we actually start replacing that mantra? Can we actually start looking at maybe positive intentions and affirmations, or changing that mental image that you have in your head of falling flat on your face to actually succeeding? And then we really look at, well, what is the worst that happens if you actually get up and you're not great at talking on the moment, spur of the moment thoughts coming to your head and whatnot. All right, you stumble and you fall a little bit. All right, there might be a couple of people in the meeting that sit there and go, yikes, and they feel for you. It's not the end of the world, and you'll pick yourself up and you will learn from that and you will go on, right? The sky is not going to fall. You have suffered far, far worse than that, and you have been quite successful of getting over that and moving on. And so this is no different. So first and foremost, we need to make sure that we are clarifying our values and making sure that the things that we're doing day to day are in alignment with our values. Second, we need to replace that negative mantra with a positive one, right? Every time we catch ourselves saying, I'm no good at this, or I'm going to be caught at this, or somebody's going to question my qualifications or my ability or whatnot, you switch it to something that is positive, right? That I am the perfect person for this job, right? For example, I'm the perfect person for my coaching business, not because I'm the perfect coach in the entire world, that every person, this nearly 8 billion people on the planet, are going to come and find help with me, but that there are certainly people in this planet that are going to resonate with my story and my style of coaching. And that if I wasn't giving back to people what I can do, that it is a detriment to them. And every single one of you can look at the same thing, right? You all are valuable human beings that have something to offer. You have no idea how many people you are touching on a day-to-day basis, that they are getting so much from what you are able to offer them. Even if we're just looking at your work, even if that is just office work, right? That you don't feel that you have a spiritual connection with, that you can't imagine how you would be helping other people, but you are, because you can always think about somebody who took you under their wing, right? Who, when you started a job and you didn't know what was going on, there was always that one person that stood next to you and helped you and made you feel like you could do this, right? Even something as simple as that makes a huge difference. And you are the best at being able to do that in that moment because of everything that you bring to the table. That includes all your flaws as well as all your perfections, right? And that brings me to perspective, right? looking at this idea of imposter syndrome as an actual gift, looking at it as the ability to step aside and look at how this can help you to stay mindful, how it can help you in your own day-to-day practice, how it can help you to bring positive intentions and affirmations and maybe spiritual work into your life, how this can help you to grow as a person, and how it can help you to do the very best. Like I was saying before, stepping aside and actually taking a look and asking yourself, is this the best that I can do? Is this the best option in this scenario? Is not a bad thing, right? It just is a matter of perspective, of how you're looking at things. It's also a wonderful opportunity for you to actually step aside and look at all the things that you are grateful for you to be recognizing your strengths in things, recognizing your abilities, and then showing yourself that gratitude. So I hope that helped. There is numerous things that we could talk about with regards to imposter syndrome. So even if you weren't able to be a part of this live broadcast, I would love for you to still put in comments, share this out to anybody that you like, and I'd love to read up on the comments and see how imposter syndrome might be hurting you, and how you feel maybe that you can get over imposter syndrome and use it by changing your perspective, or if you already have, how that is going, and maybe other advice that you have for people that they could take on board. I would love for you to be part of that conversation. And who knows, it might spawn another Facebook Live next weekend. So thank you so much for tuning in. I hope that you found that very helpful, as do I. I always find doing things just as helpful for me as it is for you. So please place your comments below, share the heck out of this, give me lots of likes and hearts so other people can see this, and put your comments in first and foremost. And I would love to get back to each and every one of you. Thank you. Bless.